What's up everyone, I'm Dave Mech and welcome to another video, and this is just insane. Electron just dropped a new firmware for the Syntakt, adding the sampling machine, which is insane. Some people thought it would be possible because there's apparently a chip that should be able to handle samples, but I was one of the people that said, nah, they're not gonna do that. I was wrong. Happy to say that I was wrong. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there as well that is amazing. So let's just, stop talking and get into it. Or wait, no, I'm gonna talk and explain actually what I can do. So let's go. So the first thing, of course, is that we have now a sample machine. It's pretty easy. You can see it here. You can load it in by pressing Func and Syn. And when you go through the list, you have your standard list that you're familiar with, and then a little bit lower, SP Twinshot. So when you load that in, you get this little sample list. So from sample 1 until 64, and from -1 to -64, which reverses the playback of the sample. And we got 2 of those. The first one also has a high pass and a low pass filter. Very nice. And the decay time. The second sample does not get influenced by this decay time. We can tune it, of course. And that's basically it. It's fairly basic. Yeah, we can, of course, change the balance between the 2 samples. So you can have a click on the second sample, for instance, a little click, and the kick on the top sample. We can also load 2 big kicks. I have a lot of overdrive on these because it's part of a 3 layers of kick. But you can also high pass this first one, for instance, and mix in the other one. You can actually layer 2 samples together that way. For this project, actually, I loaded in a couple of samples. Good thing to know is when you load in samples through transfer application, you get 64 samples in total on the Syntakt, not per project, in total. It's a very kind of rudimentary, but it's more meant to add some one-shots to the Syntakt, namely nice hi-hats, for instance, like a 909. And of course you can also add some stabs. Got different hi-hats, some clanks, which is abandoned factory samples, by the way, from my shop, if you want to have these. And some stabs, right? So you got per sample 5 seconds maximum of sampling time, which is not bad actually. It's pretty good. Another good thing to know is that when you have it filled up with 5-second samples, 64 samples, each lasting 5 seconds, it can take up to 2 minutes to boot up the Syntakt. So know what you're getting into. I kept it fairly basic for now. I just loaded in a couple of hi-hats and a couple of stabs and some clanks and kicks. So I created this little groove. And yeah, it's just the main thing that I really like is having this nice 909 hi-hat now. Another cool thing is that I can now, for instance, filter this first sample and mix in the second. Cool thing is that you can actually create interesting transitions this way as well. Just want to show you that. So that is the sampling machine. I have another project here where I modulated the hell out of this thing and also recorded the sample slot list. Everything is P-lockable. You can also modulate it with LFOs. For instance, this is triggering different samples. Also reverse, and the balance between the 2 samples is changed. You get some funky. Same here. So with the new sample machine in the Syntakt, we also get a new transfer application, of course, that actually adds sample management on the Syntakt. So connect your Syntakt via USB to your computer, open up transfer, select Syntakt. If it's not already there, click connect. And now you can go to explore. And here, usually you would have only seen project and sound. But now we also have samples. And here you can actually see the sample list. And you can see attention on Syntakt. The samples are shared globally between all projects and patterns, making use of the Twinshot machine. Changing samples or their order may affect some or all of your patterns in multiple projects. So, two new things that we are going to see here is that because this is a global list of samples, meaning in any project using the Twinshot machine, the sample list will be the same. We can actually change the order of the samples. I can drag this to some here, for instance, drag it back, etc., which is quite cool. And I hope this gets implemented for the Digitect 2 as well, where we can actually load a project or something and then start moving samples in slots around to get a clear structure going. Anyway, one can dream, right? You can see that we have 64 sample slots. We can simply drag a sample in and it will automatically convert it to the right type that is used by the Syntakt. We can also press right mouse click and delete and get rid of it. So keep in mind that the samples need to be under 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds per sample maximum. Other than that, it's fairly straightforward. You can also drag this to the left so you can make a backup if you want. And once this is done, you can fire up the Syntakt. And once it has booted, there will be a slight delay. And then you will see loading samples, basically, because it's then loading the samples into its global memory. Another big change is that we now, if we go to settings, have something new in the pattern menu. So let's select pattern menu. We have your rename and etc. audio routing, but now we have Control All config. So now we can actually remove the kick and or the low end from being influenced by Control All, which is amazing because definitely for the Syntakt, less so for the Digitect and the Digitone. For the Syntakt, controlling all on certain kicks and stuff just sounded really wacky. So there were definitely some grooves where I wasn't able to really go nuts with Control without it sounding completely weird or muting tracks. And now I can sort of fix that. So that's really, really nice. So again, in the settings, the pattern settings, we also have track relations. We have 2 pages. One, we can layer. I got a baseline here, and I can also trigger this track or that track or everything. It's a very nice function that was has always been present in the Digitone, also the first one. So yeah, definitely nice to go nuts with. And then we have track chokes. So this is the thing that definitely the boom bap community or the hip hop community will love, because track chokes can be super useful. Actually, in techno, it's also quite useful. So now I want to have this track 4 chokes, track 5. So if I engage this, silence. Right, so go back. Let's remove from track 4 these triggers, and I still don't hear anything because the length parameter influences how long this chokes the other track. So I actually need to make these triggers a little shorter. There we go. So there you go. If I would change this to something alloy, for instance, you can really hear it. On the effects track, on the filter page, second filter page, we now have frequency pan. So we can actually create very nice wide stereo spectrum this way. You can hear how nice this sounds with the dual notch filter. But also with a high pass filter, this can have some interesting results. And of course you can modulate this with an LFO. So if we set this to filter pan, there we go. Can create some very trippy effects. Yeah, with the double notch filter, it's just very... It's another layer of trippiness to it. Set this one to filter frequency. Without filter panning. With filter panning. Modulated filter panning, I should say. So, when I go into mute mode, we can now press and hold funk and actually prepare mutes like so. They turn red when you prepare muting, and they turn orange when prepare unmuting. So we can do something like this. So another cool thing about the new update is that usually when you would have switched to the pattern mutes, which are the mutes that are actually saved with a pattern rather than being global across patterns, which is the green one, when you turn off the Syntakt and back on, it would always go back to the global mute state. And now it actually remembers this mute state, which is really nice. It's just a little touch, but it's so nice. The Digitakt 2 and the Digitone 2 already had that. So it's nice that that made its way into the Syntakt as well. In the setup, the sound setup, we have filter key track, but we also have key tracking modulation matrix now, which is very nice. So for this track, the higher I play, the more mod envelope depth there will be and more feedback and a little less amp volume, for example. And on top of that, I also had some filter key tracking going on. This is such a nice modulation matrix because it really adds so much to the expressiveness of a melody. So, very nice. Glad to have that. If we go to settings, we have the well-known Personalize menu when you have an Octatrack or a Digitakt 2 or a Digitone 2. This is a well-known thing. We can now set the LED intensity here rather than by holding this. You can still do that, but it's also in the Personalize menu. You can change the LED intensity, the backlight on or off, like so. We can remember subpage, meaning that if you go to the second page of the filter, then go to another page and back to the filter, it will go to the second page immediately. Page autocopy, you can turn off if you don't want that, which basically means if you have a sequence on page 1 and you add more steps to the sequence or more pages, it would auto-copy any triggers on the first page to the second and the third and the fourth. Or if you had 2 pages worth of sequence and add 2 more pages, it will copy those first 2 to the second 2. Very useful. I keep it on. It often increases the speed of programming. So now we have node parameter, scale, or chromatic. If it's chromatic, it's the default behavior that we're used to. If you change the node parameter, it just scrolls through all the nodes. If you set it to scale, it will stick to the nodes within the keyboard scale. When you press Func plus track and hold it for a little bit, you get into the keyboard setup menu, and it will then stick to the notes within the key that we're playing in, which is pretty cool because you can actually record that. So if I reset this melody and just put in some random trigs, and I can now record this note parameter while it stays in scale. So, pretty nice. That's one of those things that I sometimes use when I'm out of ideas and I want to just add some randomness and see where it takes me, and then change things. When I recorded some weird melody, I can then go in and change things until it sort of fits. It's a very nice little technique that I also teach in my course, actually. One of my courses for the Digitone and the Digitect, actually, because it's a nice little thing to generate ideas. So live recording overdub, when you record notes or parameter logs into the sequencer, it will add it on already existing triggers instead of replacing them. So when you have certain microtiming dialed in very specifically, it will not sort of override that note. When you replay it, it will replace it, which is very nice. And the same goes for the parameter locking. And then we have parameter live recording, all or trig. If it's set to all, when you record parameter logs into the sequencer through live recording mode, it would just add log trigs whenever there was no trigger present, right? With this set to trigger, it will only record parameter logs on top of already placed triggers into the sequencer, log trigs and no trigs. If you have a very cool melody and you want to have each note play a different thing and not have log trigs that change the behavior of parameters in between long notes, for instance, you can turn this to trigger, start live recording mode, go to town, and only note triggers will have the parameter logs applied, which is actually quite cool. Then we have track select normal. Well, that's just when you press a trigger, it will trigger the track and it will change to that track. And with holding track, it will go to that track and be silent. You can also set it to silent, and then it will just be silent, right? Makes sense. And you can also set it to manual. So now I can play it, right? But it won't change, and only changing with track, which is quite nice. And then when you have inverted, and that is how I use it currently in my live setup, you can actually change tracks like this and hold track to play it. Because in a live situation, I tend to just want to be as quick as possible to change tracks without it playing. And this way it just saves me an extra key press. So it's much, much faster. And then we have FX track select. So if it's set to manual, this is basically how it was, as I remember. So if you go to the FX track, and this was always a little bit of a weird thing. Definitely when I just got the Syntakt, this was something I really needed to get used to. Because when I go to effects, I sort of automatically thought that when I would press a track again, it would switch, but it doesn't. So you have to go out of FX track and then switch. I think a lot of people will concur with me here. But you now can set it to normal. And now I can go to the effects track, go to a normal track, go to the effects track, go to a normal track, etc. It's actually quite nice. And I'm going to leave it there because I like it. They copied the behavior of the pattern selection to the Syntakt, which to me is a huge improvement. We don't get a countdown thing anymore, which I hated in a live situation because sometimes I just want to queue it up and leave it there for a little bit and then change. But we can now change banks like so as well. So the bank button is a little bit useless, but hey. And we also have the func plus yes to go to the chain menu. And if you're not familiar with this yet, you can actually change banks here by pressing left and right arrow. And I can chain different patterns like this. And this is also a huge improvement because now you can actually have the first pattern play 4 or 5 times in a row, whatever you want. So that's actually much nicer. And you can also create a song from chain. And this is a very nice workflow indeed. New trig conditions. So if we go to the trigger page and we hold a couple of triggers like this, it changes to cond. And we can actually scroll through this. These are well known by now. First, last. But now we have last, as you can see. Basically, when you trigger another pattern, these will then be triggered. It's not perfect to me anyway, because let's say I set the change length to 64. What I expect to happen is I play this and now go to the next pattern and it will change at the end of the 64 steps. I really hoped that then these would trigger, but it's actually as soon as I go to the next pattern, they start playing. See? Until the actual switch. Not perfect, but I guess this is the only way that it can be implemented. So then we can move on. We have 1-2, 2-2 with a little roof on top. So that's interesting, right? And basically what this does is it means don't play the second time of the 3 times, which means that these will now play the first time, the second time they won't, and the third time they will. See? You can do some interesting stuff with that. There was sort of a workaround to make this happen by using lock trigs and sort of muting them and setting them in different conditions, but that would take up steps. So this is definitely a huge improvement over the previous way of doing this. Then we have something really cool, I think. It's also a huge workflow improvement. We can actually parameter lock all trigs within a sequence or per page. So this, for instance, I can press and hold the trigger in grid recording mode, then press track and change the parameter locks for all trigs within this track. As you can see, we will have changed them all. Super useful. And you can also do this per page by pressing and holding one of the trigs and then page and then changing this. See now. The second page has amp decay time full open and the other one is closed. Super useful. You can do some very interesting stuff with that, and it's also just a very fast way of working. Another cool thing is that we can also do this with microtiming. So if I press and hold the trigger, then press func, and then microtime this to the left, all triggers within this track, you can see it microtime all. Which again is super useful if, let's say, you want to add some swing on one track rather than on the whole project. I can now just go like this, func, microtime, like so, and then add the other triggers in between, and I have some swing on one track. Another little improvement that I really like is that we have, and I'm going to set this to something very obvious, synth tune, a little improvement on the LFOs. If we set this to a random waveform, you can now see that this parameter changes to slew. And what slew does is, instead of it being stepped random, it sort of slides into the next value smoothly according to the slew parameter. And that's why I choose the tune parameter, because that will be super obvious. Sounds horrible, but it's just to make a point. See, it sort of glides into the next pitch. So this is stepped. Slew. So there's also a couple of nice user interface improvements, like on the LFO pages, selecting categories by holding funk also improves the speed of dialing in specific mod sources, mod targets, I should say, destinations. On parameter locking, you can now also snap values by holding a parameter lock and holding funk and snapping. So that's also nice. Can be very useful, for instance, on the effects track when you want to parameter lock delay. Press and hold funk and it will snap to these specific values, which is quite cool. So you can get some very nice glitch going on. Then on the mod pages, so if I select mod A by pressing funk plus 15 and then funk modifier setup, they improved the view of the destination list, which is also quite a nice touch. Then you can also see on pages with multiple pages, like the mixer pages, funk plus mixer, up and down now works as well, like on the Digitech 2 and the Digitone 2. And you can also see this by the indicator on the right. So that's a nice little thing. And on filter envelope or envelope pages in general, you can see now that we have these handles, which makes it a bit easier to read. So that is the Syntakt OS 1.4. Very impressive update, and the addition of samples just makes the Syntakt so nice. It already was so nice because of the very direct and fast workflow this thing has and the amazing sound. Definitely when you start pushing it. And now we have great hi-hats and we can add little one-shots and stuff to this thing to make it even better. So glad they still give this lovely drum synth groove box thing some love. So, hope you liked this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to get notified when I upload new videos. And I'll see you in the next one.